Well, good morning. Our health is something that's a concern for all of us. And this morning I'll be talking with someone who has been part of the UP healthcare scene for many years. Now he's working on a very special project. We'll find out more about that and more because it all starts right now.
From TV6, this is The Ryan Report. Now here's your host, Don Ryan.
Well, our guest this morning is Dr. Dan Mizuki. He's currently heading up a project called the Trillium House, and we want to spend some time this morning talking about that. But Dan also has a pretty interesting career history as a physician who has been part of the UP medical scene for many years. You'll see what I mean as we explore some of those details with him. Really pleased he could join us this morning. Dr. Dan Mizuki, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. Nice to be here.
And I should share with our audience, about 15 minutes before we started, I got hit in the head with a door. Fortunately, the doctor was here and could consult with me.
I told you not to do that anymore.
And after, yes, right. Whatever you did, don't do it again. So I don't know if the audience can see it or not, but I'm apparently okay, unless we stop in the middle of the show and then we'll do something else. Dan, let's talk about you. First of all, you grew up a long way from here, didn't you?
Washington, D.C. area.
Okay. And I know you went to school at Holy Cross and at George Washington University.
Medical school at GW, yeah.
And I just happened to see that last month the Associated Press named both of those schools as among the top 100 basketball schools of all time. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Were you a basketball player?
Oh, when I was there, Bob Cousy had just left.
Okay.
And so that was pretty widely discussed stuff on campus.
Okay.
Yeah.
But Holy Cross and George Washington are two kind of legendary names in college basketball.
Indeed.
I also learned by doing a little research on the internet that you were a bartender when you were going to college.
College and medical school. I kind of worked my way through as a bartender and learned an awful lot by doing it.
Yeah, you thought, you said it was a degree in listening, I think.
It's like a lot of things, but in that regard, but really it's amazing the things that people want to say to someone they don't fear. Mm-hmm. Somebody they learn to trust.
Sure.
And even as a young kid, people would tell me things and they were just happy to have somebody sit and listen.
Okay.
And that's a good thing to learn, especially when you move on into later life, adult life.
That was part of your education. So after you finished medical school, you actually went in the Navy, I think, first, didn't you?
These were the days of Vietnam, and in those days, all physicians went into service of some sort or another, or in public health service. I took a commission in the Navy just as I was in medical school, and then, like so many other people, went on active duty after I finished my residency.
Okay. How did you wind up coming to Marquette? There's got to be a story.
I wish
there.
I knew. It was one of those happy accidents. My wife and children and I were in Maryland, close by to where I grew up, and we were kind of looking for a place. And I saw an ad for Marquette, Michigan, which I didn't know anything about, in a medical journal. I made a telephone call, got on a plane, flew up here, and absolutely fell in love with it. And even before my wife had had a chance to see it, I told her, I think this is it. She said, buy a house.
Huh. And you've been here ever since.
In the same house, too.
Really?
Yeah.
You and I are the same age, and we've seen so many changes in healthcare. Just talk about some of them that since you've been around.
Oh my!
Where do you begin?
Yeah. Well, in terms of the place, I don't remember exactly, but I think I was the 32nd or 33rd physician in Marquette when I came.
Okay.
There's 200 and some now.
Okay.
So that's a huge change. Medical specialties were just beginning. And the specialties in internal medicine really were just beginning. Mine was in renal disease, kidney disease. And so one of the reasons they wanted me to come here was to open the dialysis unit, which was a brand new thing.
Okay.
Until that time, there was no insurance that would cover kidney dialysis, and there was no government program that would pay for it. So it had to await those events before becoming a real possibility for communities like ours. And so that was my first challenge when I came here, was starting a medical practice and opening a dialysis unit.
And you've had a lot of leadership positions. You were chief of staff at then Marquette General for a while?
We kind of took turns doing that with a small number of us, but yes, that was an eye-opening thing, as almost everything else. You do. I think to myself sometimes when you get involved, and I know you do too,
Right.
you wonder, oh boy, how dumb am I? I didn't realize that, but yeah.
Yeah. And you were the director of the medical center for a while?
Yeah, that was something that started. We uncertain about where we would be going, and you know, it was a learning experience for all of us. But yeah, that you know, I think it was one of the steps on the way to where the medical center has developed now. And now I can't imagine a community without the medical center. But
Right, and for those who don't know, the Marquette Medical Center became what we have today.
Indeed.
Of course. Yeah. You were also involved early on with a program associated with Michigan State University.
it was a wonderful thing. The man who was leading the medical school at Michigan State came up here. The first year I was here, and a whole bunch of us went to the UP Medical Society meeting that year, and there he was to present this idea of developing a program to train medical students of Michigan State University's medical school for their education here in the Upper Peninsula, and where the program would recruit heavily, wherever possible, from people who already lived here, with the hope that they would retain them after they finished their medical training. A lot of things happened after that, but several of us got excited by that possibility and got involved in one way or another as teachers, usually. But one thing led to another, and I wound up in an administrative position there after some time.
You went through a lot of positions. In fact, wound up running the whole program.
Yeah, one thing led to another, but the crude term for it would be a doctor factory.
Okay.
But in fact, I don't know the numbers anymore, but I think a couple of hundred people, graduates of that program or the residency program, have stayed here to practice for a while, if not forever, and the impact on the practice of medicine in the Upper Peninsula has been unbelievably large from that program.
Okay. We'll pick it up right there in a couple of minutes. Back with more on the Ryan Report after we take a break. Again, we're talking with Dr. Dan Mizuki this morning. Dan retired, but still very active in many ways, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But before we leave, we were talking about the medical education program, and it really has had a big impact, hasn't it?
It has, I think, not only in terms of making it more possible for some Upper Peninsula young people to go to medical school, but also to retain those people after they finish their training. The residency at Marquette General Hospital has been a huge help with that too. But also, I think, because having the medical students here helps the docs.
Sure.
It helps everybody. Actually, it's not just medical students now. Medical students, nursing students, tech students, the whole healthcare army, if you will. Many of those people now are being trained here, and that means local people are getting these jobs, and local people can stay here instead of having to go elsewhere for their training. A major, major difference.
The other thing I want to talk to you about is the fact that, you know, a lot of doctors really don't have much time to get involved. You've been a super involved guy your whole life. It would take me a while just to read all the things you've been involved with. But for example, you were a city commissioner, you were the mayor of Marquette, you've been involved in so many organizations. Obviously that's something you wanted to do.
You know, the truth is, I think both for me and for my whole family, we fell in love with this place. I think for sure I still am. And I think along the way you meet people, I don't care what job you have, you meet people, you form bonds and ties, and you want to get involved in some of the things they do, whether it's recreational or whether it's civic. And I think the sense of belonging here, and the sense of realizing what a wonderful life and opportunity the place has given you makes you want to do things.
Yeah, and you certainly have. As I said, you've been involved in your church and United Way and the Chamber of Commerce and just about everything you can get involved with. You've been part of it one time or another.
It's been a wonderful opportunity to meet people.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about hospice. You were a volunteer in the hospice program for a long time. You know, as a doctor, why do you think hospice is important?
I got interested in hospice long before I retired. When I retired, I decided to be a hospice volunteer, not a physician, just a volunteer, to go into homes and to do what I could do to help a situation that was a very difficult thing for both the person who was dying and for the family taking care of them. I saw enough to know that those are very special people, that the patients are people who need somebody to listen, as we talked about before, that people taking care of them. I've told many people I think of them as saintly, people who give up themselves and their energy to take care of a loved one who they know is leaving this world. So it's just one of those wonderful things. After I retired, I was able to do a lot more of that sort of thing. It's wonderful to see hospice workers of all kinds, nurses, home health aides, clergy, counselors, docs, who are working to make the last part of a person's life as happy and as comfortable as they can possibly make it.
Now, a lot of these people who go into hospice care have a couple of choices. One, I think, is for some pretty aggressive medical care, and one is hospice care. Is that correct?
People who are dying have many choices.
Right.
Maybe I should put it a different way. People who have illnesses that could cause their death, some of those people are years away from death. Some of those people are weeks away from death. Situation varies. Hospice is intended to be for those people who are anticipated to have a lifespan of 6 months or less. That's a federal thing.
Okay.
And when people come into hospice care, they basically have given up on other kinds of potential therapies which may or may not have any benefit. So surgeries and things like that. There's always an exception here and there, and I can't speak too uniformly because every person's circumstance is a little different. But
right.
By and large, people who are in hospice care are being given what's called palliative care, helping care, but not curative care.
Okay. We'll follow up on that in just a couple of minutes. Once again, we'll continue with the Ryan Report after we take this commercial break. Again, this morning we're talking with Dr. Dan Mazzucchi, talking about hospice right before the break. You know, what can people expect if they go into hospice care? What's going to be different than, you know, if they didn't make that choice?
You know, to some degree it depends on the circumstances that they come from. There are people, for example, who live alone or who live with one other person or who live with a person who's also ill. There are some people who are from very wonderful families and have all kinds of friends to help and so forth and so on. So a little difference there. But what they can expect in general is attention to every part of their palliative care needs. By that I mean things that make them feel better. So pain control, nobody's better at pain control than hospice people. That's what they do. Getting off of medications that might cause more harm than good. Someone through the volunteer program, someone to visit them, to talk with them, to play cards with them, to help them with chores, to help cook meals, etc. From the nursing point of view, people who can come into the home and help with daily care, washing needs, making beds, getting people up in wheelchairs, etc. That kinds of things. They can also expect spiritual care. If they don't have their own, which is perfectly fine to have, hospice will provide a spiritual care of their choice.
Okay. Now you're very involved now with a project called Trillium House. First of all, tell us what it is.
Trillium House is a home, or will be a home, specifically and solely for people who are under hospice care. The goal and objective of hospice in general is to care for people where they want to be, which is in their own home most of the time. But sadly, that's not always an option for people. There are some people, unfortunately, who don't have a home. There are people who have a home, but they live alone and can't provide all their own care. There are people who have a home, may live with one other person, and the care needs are overwhelming. Hospice people can help, but they can't be in the home at all times. And there are people who have just about everything, but the people who are taking care of them become exhausted from sometimes 24-hour-a-day care and need a break. Trillium House will be designed to serve all those needs,
Okay.
so that people who are in hospice care will have a home, not necessarily their own, for days or weeks, depending on how much they need them, and they can move in and out of it as need rises. And that home will be specifically designed not only for them, but for their families as well.
Okay. Now you've set out, you and a group, you're the president of a group, to raise how much money?
About $2.5 million, and we've raised close to $2 million already. We need 90% of that to start our building. We're getting close now.
Okay.
We have a very large matching grant in place right now of $200,000 that some may have heard us speak about.
Right.
And then once that's finished being matched, we probably will have enough money to break ground, and we hope to be able to do that sometime this spring or summer.
And in case people are watching who want to make a contribution, what's the best thing they can do? Who do they contact?
Well, they can go online to the trilliumhospicehouse.org, or they can make a telephone call. Oh, the number's not in my head right now.
That's all right.
Or they can call me at my home, which is 228-8970, and I'll be glad to take care of them.
Okay. So you're really doing well with this. Where will the house be built?
There's a spot right now that we have purchased that has been prepared for the building. The utilities are in, and it's kind of in the middle of a rectangle formed by McClellan, Grove Street, Forest Park, and Wilson.
Okay.
Actually, about 2.5 blocks by helicopter from where the new hospital is going to be.
So you actually think if you possibly could break ground this spring?
You know, it's possible. It's more likely probably be early summer, but you never know. I mean, sometimes there's an unexpected gift out there, and if you're listening, please feel free.
Yeah.
We'd love to be able to close off the fundraising part of this and really make this a reality.
And this is a separate organization, right? This isn't one of the hospice service
No, as a matter of
providers.
fact, both of the hospice organizations have been represented in the leadership of this since day one.
And this is primarily to certain. Are there other hospice houses in the UP?
Yeah,
Houses
one of the
this type?
reasons why we decided to do this was when we became aware of the fact that Omega House, which is exactly this, has been in the Houghton area for 10 years now.
Okay.
Hospice at the Eastern UP has been in the Sioux for about 3 or 4 years now. And here we are with the major population of the UP in the central portion of the Upper Peninsula, and we don't have one, and we need one as much or more than these other places do.
But it's looking pretty positive.
It looks positive. It feels, it feels real, but it won't be real until we start being able to build it.
Well, congratulations on all you've done, not just with Trillium House, but your involvement in the community and the great career you've had. It's been fun having you in today to talk about it.
Thanks. Been very, very nice. I appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.
Dr. Dan Mizuki. I'll have some other thoughts for you after we take one more break. Well, a couple of unusual stories crossed my desk this week, and being ever vigilant to bring you the most fascinating news I can find, I put them aside so I could pass them along in case you missed them. Not that the content is critical, but it is kind of interesting. The first carried the headline, "The Great Japan Potato Chip Crisis. Panic Buying $12 Bags." Now, who would have thought there would be a potato chip crisis anywhere, and especially in Japan? According to Bloomberg and other sources, demand for potato chips surged in Japan, with people paying 6 times the normal retail price after one of the country's major snack companies halted the sale of most of its popular chip brands. For me, this just raised all kinds of questions. Who knew that potato chips were a major snack item in Japan? And why is there suddenly a shortage? I guess the answer to the first question is the people in Japan certainly knew it. News reports say that potato chips are a big deal in Japan. According to a TV poll of 10,000 people, that major snack company's potato snack products were the most and the second most popular snacks in the country. Apparently the crunch came, no pun intended, after the company said it will temporarily halt the sale of 15 types of potato chips due to a bad potato crop in Hokkaido, a key producing region. The northern island was hit by a record number of typhoons last year. The fact that Japan limits the imports of potatoes hasn't helped the problem. A company spokesperson said that regulatory hurdles limiting the amount of imported potatoes that can be used in products was partly responsible for the shortage. So we need to send more potatoes to Japan. It's the human thing to do. I'm guessing we have potatoes here in Upper Michigan we could be sending over there right now. Some real nice spuds, as a matter of fact. Maybe this is one of those trade issues we should get President Trump working on. And finally, as reported in an earlier broadcast, the oldest person in the world passed away. Her name was Emma Morana. She lived in Italy. She was 117 years old. According to news reports, she was the last living person to have been born in the 1800s. And because of that, her life spanned parts of 3 centuries. When asked about her longevity, the thing she credits for her long life, besides family history, is the fact that for over 90 years, she ate 3 eggs every day, 2 of them raw. So much for the dangers of eating raw cookie dough, at least for Emma. I'll be back in a minute. It's time for us to wrap it up for another week. The Today Show is waiting just around the corner. Do have time to remind you can find the latest news 24 hours a day at uppermichigansource.com. You can also catch this show at that same address. Thanks to Dr. Dan Mazzucchi for coming in this morning to share some information with us about Trillium House, a project near and dear to his heart, and one that's important to our community as well. And thank you for joining us. Look forward to seeing you again next Sunday morning.